The 2000s were definitely a game changing experience when it came literally into the gaming industry because there was so much different sorts of games, innovative games, games that literally created new genres, created these new standards, these new game designs, philosophies that live up to modern video games right now. The 2000s and 90s were definitely an experience when it came onto gaming. There was just incredibly so many things to try out and see, and a lot of things were just straight up different. Nothing felt repetitive. There was straight variety into gaming, whether you were in the arcade, to home consoles, to newer games from each company. Everyone was going all out. It was definitely the golden era of video games. And back in 2005, one of those games that changed everybody's lives, because at least at this point, everyone knows what this game is. It is called Resident Evil 4. The most iconic Resident Evil game within the franchise, one of the biggest games, one of the biggest game that is released on every single platform we know of. It's literally everywhere. You could get it anywhere other than, Android, iOS, which Capcom has to be on that ASAP. Despite the jokes that I was making, this game was actually very, very a game changing experience as well. It was a very different game. It was a game out of its time because of how the gameplay is. It was unique. It set standards and changed how the Resident Evil series actually approaches their Biohazard titles, surprisingly. So, with that being said, let's actually go into Resident Evil 4. And I do actually have a history with Resident Evil 4. Although back then when I was younger, although I wasn't like a hardcore Resident Evil fan, I was somebody who knew about the series, and that's just mainly due to RE4 just simply came up into my life when my cousin brought in that game for the Wii. Before we get into talking about all these sort of stories I have, and also giving my thoughts into Infinite Darkness, because that's another reason why I made this video. I just thought it would make a lot of sense to make a Resident Evil 4 video revisiting it because of the whole Infinite Darkness hype, and also since I've watched all episodes, I'm gonna give a non-spoiler impressions or like little review, and then I'll talk about spoilers in the end. So yeah, in the gameplay, literally, this was actually my first time playing on controller, and I will talk about again my history with RE4, but yeah, this was my first time playing on controller, so if my aiming seems bad, it's pretty much why, and if it seems shaky, that's the game or controller. I don't know why Leon's aim is so shaky on controller on PC. And again, I'm used to playing Resident Evil 4 on keyboard and mouse, and not so well on controller. Again, when I first played Resident Evil 4, it was on PC. So please, I hope you guys do mind. And I recently technically played a whole playthrough on my own of Resident Evil 4 on my own back in February. And I did play on normal mode, and then I played on professional mode, and all on mouse and keyboard. Anyway, so you're probably wondering, wait, what? It's been like 16 plus years and you haven't played Resident Evil until now? And yes, before Resident Evil Village came out, I wanted to familiarize myself with how Resident Evil 4 is, since that's the big inspiration for Resident Evil Village. I want to get familiar with the inventory system, the case and all that, and just play it on my own, because I mean, it's talked about a lot, and RE4 has been part of my childhood. So back then when I was younger, obviously I never wanted to play any sort of Resident Evil game because I was just honestly scared to play those games. I didn't have the guts to. I was young, and I just didn't really care about those games as well. Not really a big fan of the horror genre or survival horror genre, and also shooters. I was a big Nintendo guy, and although it was a big exclusive for the GameCube, I never decided to get it because there was other fun games to me that I was enjoying when I was younger. But as I got older, my family and we started getting into like shooters and like the horror genre. So one of my cousins one day bought RE4 for the Wii, and he brought it over to my house, or like my relative's house, and basically he brought over so we could all experience Resident Evil 4 together. But obviously he played throughout the whole game, so we could all experience of how the game is and all that, or see how the game is, not necessarily have a full-on experience, but just see how the game is. And honestly, just seeing the first like 5 minutes, 10 minutes of the game, it honestly creeped me out when I was younger. You know, it gave me definitely some creepy vibes, the typical horror aspects when it came to Resident Evil 4. So it's pretty much why I never really got to play it until now. I also, throughout the years, I just never found the time to go back to Resident Evil 4, even though I wanted to, because my love for Resident Evil started to grow slowly as years went on, and obviously as I grew older, like I said before. I think my love for Resident Evil started to spark when my cousin told me I should co-op with him on Resident Evil 5, and we ended up playing that whole game together, and bam, from there on out, I started liking Resident Evil. I started going back to its history, knowing its roots, and understanding about the whole survival horror genre, so on and so forth. But definitely Resident Evil has it's definitely a franchise that has grown on to me, and has actually been, looking back at it in retrospect, has been a huge part of my childhood, especially just knowing about Resident Evil 4. I do remember so many things from that game when it came to its story, the monsters, you could say, or like the infected people, the villagers, the moments that Resident Evil 4 had always stuck to me behind the back of my head, because there's just so many iconic moments, and Resident Evil 4 is the most 2000s action-packed video game experience that I ever seen. So definitely, that's how you know Resident Evil 4 was definitely a big game to me back then. It was, again, something that was iconic to the gaming industry and to the gaming community, especially to Resident Evil fans. And here I am now, 16 years later, talking about Resident Evil and going back to it. And again, back in February, it was my first ever time playing it. And honestly, I did have fun playing it, and playing it on both modes, normal and professional. Even though there were flaws about the game, I was still able to have fun. In the end, it's all about having fun, and it's an old game, so there's definitely going to have a lot of like BS experiences, or like cheesy experiences, a lot of flaws within its game design, and it is what it is. That's how old games are. But the thing is, since it's an old game, and what I did back then when I was younger is always gotta cheese these old video games. So, when I was playing this game, it definitely gave me a whole nostalgic trip of me honestly just constantly cheesing the game and stuff. There was moments where I was able to cheese, and I did try to play the game of how the devs wanted me to play it, or seemingly wanted me to play it, but honestly, it's just hard to do. So in order to just play these old games, not just with RE4, just any older title, you gotta cheese them back. I mean, that's what I did when I was younger, when I was playing video games. I mean, that's what we basically were taught to do. It was nice going back and actually having another new experience, trying out on controller again. My aim was horrible and such, but it was it was just a different feeling. And keyboard and mouse, although I feel very comfortable on aiming and shooting, and even moving on keyboard and mouse, keyboard and mouse does have its pros and cons, and that's simply because of the inventory system. It's just the keys are kind of spread out everywhere. Organizing stuff, everything just seems so weird when organizing your inventory, and it's just better on doing it on a controller. And the thing about controller, as much as I like moving around with the controller, feeling more comfortable with the controller, it's just that the aiming for me just throws me really off, and the sensitivity as well. You have no options to really change the sensitivity in the game. I think it's pretty much why I was I just felt the gameplay you're seeing right now, I felt very comfortable from the start, but later on, I don't know how long this video will be, But you see me like getting used to the shooting and the aiming and stuff. It starts to grow on me a bit. I've started getting better. It's just again, it's all about getting used to stuff because it's been a while since I played the game, and also um, it was my first time on controller. Again, keyboard and mouse for me is definitely the experience. It's just also another thing is the QTEs as well. Since I heard that there's this like weird optimization with the game since they boost up the frame rate to 60 FPS on PC and also even on console. You would have to actually mash way more faster than usual than in the older generation RE games. I mean, Resident Evil 4 titles in the older generation consoles because of, I don't know, again, the weird optimization. So mashing on the keyboard and mouse or a keyboard is not ideal for me. I don't like doing that, but it was something I had to do throughout the playthroughs I was doing. I did beat the game multiple times on professional mode as well. Yeah, mashing on the keyboard, man, it hurt me to do that a lot because I don't like mashing on my keyboard. I feel like I'm gonna break it. So again, it's very, very ideal to play on controller. When it comes to Resident Evil, but regardless, again, fun experience and an instant classic. Anyway, let's actually talk about Infinite Darkness now, since a lot of stuff has happened in Infinite Darkness. If you haven't actually watched the whole show, or I mean, if you did watch the whole show, you know that a lot of stuff has happened, but again, for those who are worried about spoilers, I will let you know when I'll talk about spoilers. For now, this is my non-spoiler little review or impressions of the show. The big question is, should I watch it? And if you're honestly a big Resident Evil fan and you actually keep up with the Resident Evil lore, and especially if you did like the lore that was presented in Resident Evil Village or even in the previous Resident Evil titles starting at 4 or after 4, I think this is a show meant for you. Because there's definitely a lot of character build-up, knowing characters' intentions, ideology, and there's more backstory. There's more details in the backstory within the Resident Evil universe. I think that's really cool of them. The fact that they're making Resident Evil's storytelling better, they're explaining the story more properly, giving more detail into the whole universe of Resident Evil. Again, having backstory and correlating this plot. And it's pretty much a huge theme within the modern Resident Evil titles. They correlate well with the modern or future Resident Evil titles along with Resident Evil Village. This is something you should look forward to. Especially if you like Leon and Claire. Definitely, this is a story about Leon. Don't come into this game thinking you're gonna have a lot of Claire scenes, because definitely, I mean, both of them, or Leon and Claire scenes, because definitely there's definitely moments where they're just doing their own thing, and it's more of a story about Leon, and then Claire is doing her own thing, and again, it's about character ideology. They all have their own ideas of what they believe in. And another thing is a lot of, I guess, politics, philosophy within this show. I mean, it's kind of throughout the modern Resident Evil games or movies. Also, yeah, it does. This show also correlates well with the canon Resident Evil CG movies. I'm not talking about the Hollywood movies. And the reason why I actually felt confident in this show is because when I first saw the staff within the intro, seemingly I think it was a team under Capcom or the Resident Evil team, I knew that I could trust them with the writing of Resident Evil, because again, everything was created in Japan. And the production was just made in Japan. The whole show of it, all episodes, it was like 4 to 5 episodes, by the way, and you could binge all of it if you want. It's actually pretty short, and it's interesting at the same time. It was so interesting it was so interesting to where my mom actually tuned in with me, because I was watching it in the living room, and she saw zombies and stuff, and she's actually into the whole horror genre when it comes to zombies, whether it's movies or shows. And yeah, she came in and watched it because she saw zombies. She was interested. And she sort of realized, the show wasn't really about zombies. It was really about the human drama within Resident Evil. And she started to actually really, really get into it. And this is really coming from someone who's not a big fan of Resident Evil, who doesn't even know about Resident Evil. She doesn't even know what the hell these characters are, who the hell these characters are. And I think it's honestly so cool that Capcom or the Resident Evil team were able to captivate us well, for us to enjoy the story for someone who is very familiar with Resident Evil and someone who's not even familiar with Resident Evil. So the fact that they captivate my mom on the storytelling, my mom actually really, really enjoyed the story in Infinite Darkness, and she was also shocked with the ending, and I'll talk about that later on. She really loved it a lot. She loved Claire Redfield. She loved Shen Mei in there, and she also looked at Leon as the hero of the show. So definitely, but her two favorite characters were Claire and Shen Mei. She really loved Claire. So again, it was a fun experience for me personally as well, since it was nice to just sit down and watch, something that I'm interested in, something that my mom usually is not into or doesn't even know about, and she was genuinely interested in it. So that was a really nice experience to see with each other. But anyway, yes, it's something for those, if you guys are curious about the show, listen, you could always watch it. It's I don't think it's going anywhere anytime soon, so please watch it. I'm not sure if there's gonna be a season 2, considering how it ended, because the way it ended, it makes sense, and I'll talk about that later. Yeah, I think it was good for what it is, and again, it correlates well to the current themes that they want to present now in this whole new phase, this new era within Resident Evil. That's it for my impressions when it comes to Resident Evil and when it comes to Resident Evil Infinite Darkness. So I hope you guys actually, see it and stuff, because it's a real interesting watch. So now I'm going to be actually talking about the spoilers for Infinite Darkness, so please click out if you don't want to hear any spoilers. And if you do, hey, it's all up to you. Also, to even think about it, it's not really necessarily spoilers, since the Infinite Darkness takes place literally in the past. It takes place 2 years after the whole Resident Evil 4 main plotline. So again, it takes place in the past, but definitely it puts a lot of things into perspective of these characters, and along with the world building and character intentions, ideology, and such. Again, click off if you don't want to hear spoilers. Thank you for watching the whole video and this whole RE4 experience, and I hope to see you guys in the future. There will be more Resident Evil videos coming very, very soon. But anyway, let's go on ahead and talk about spoilers. Where should I start? Because there's actually a lot to take in when it comes to that ending, because there's a lot of stuff to just go through and see when it comes to the Resident Evil plot. Because with that ending that they did with Infinite Darkness, I guess we could just start out by talking with the whole scene of Leon and Claire. There's big tension between them. I was honestly shocked of the tensions that Leon was trying to do. And just seeing that scene in general, again, make me shocked and surprised, and even though I shouldn't be surprised or shocked, just due to how we already know the events of what happened within that timeline for the future, because we played the games already and stuff. And it also, as soon as that scene happened, it definitely made a whole lot of sense to me, or when the scene ended, it made a whole lot of sense to me on why Claire and Leon no longer speak of each other, because of the tension between them, because of the different ideology they have when it comes to exposing or solving stuff with this world against the bioterrorism that our close ones are doing. And Leon obviously had the opportunity to expose and solve and do things right, but he chose not to do it. because he wants to do things in his own way. And Claire was pretty pissed. And honestly, I sided on Claire with this because I was just honestly confused on why Leon wanted to do that. But it also, again, it makes sense on why the future events of Resident Evil take place, along with Village. Now let's talk about the chemistry between Leon and Claire. A lot of people throughout the years, for many, many years, question why Leon and Claire aren't a duo, how come we haven't seen them in a game together, so on and so forth. And it's basically of this reason. It's their, I guess you could say it's their beliefs. Like, they just don't bother with each other anymore. And it's just so sad to see, but also it's very, very interesting to see the human drama with our own Resident Evil heroes. I just think it's nice to see, because I mean, in Resident Evil 6, I think my favorite moments in Resident Evil 6 was it was like a whole all-star cast, you could say. I mean, we had Leon, Chris, Ada. I mean, shoot, even Sherry was there. We had some OG characters interacting with each other, and I love that sort of stuff. You don't normally see that in a lot of modern Resident Evil titles. Usually we only have one OG character that sort of takes over or is the lead of these modern Resident Evil titles, or at least we see them, and the rest are like new Resident Evil characters. But anyway, again, it makes a whole lot of sense why there was tension between them, and it's why they don't speak of each other, because of how they generally feel about each other now. And I wonder how they're gonna bring up them two in the future RP titles. And even though you guys could say, oh, this is just Capcom or Resident Evil basically covering up the BS and lack of storytelling and character interactions throughout the years, even though it is a cover-up or not, even though you could see it as an improv storytelling, you just gotta appreciate how they're literally trying to make things interesting for the Resident Evil characters and for the Resident Evil world. So again, I see it as a win-win, despite how you guys may feel. And again, it makes a lot of sense. A lot of people were confused why there was big tension between them in the end, but it totally makes a whole lot of sense of the lack of interaction between Leon and Claire, and how they literally don't speak of each other anymore. And that was incredibly weird, because like Claire would talk about her brother all the time, which makes sense. She'd talk about other people, even talk about Barry. I mean, obviously Barry was in her game and stuff, but again, it just makes a whole lot of sense with Claire and Leon's chemistry now. And I'm just very, very curious, and I want to see what will happen in the future. But let's talk about the actions when it comes to Leon. I think when it comes to Leon, I was... I shouldn't be surprised on this, but yet I am, because it gives me a whole different perspective on how Leon as a character is. Again, we looked at him as the hero of the franchise, one of the heroes of the franchise, but again, he just failed to see what was going to happen in the future. Because within the future of within that plot line, a lot of bad stuff has happened, and he's going through stuff. I mean, RE6 was one of them, the events with Helena, and especially the one in Shanghai, China. Another one was when we saw, what do you call it? Another important scene when it comes to Leon's character is through the CG film Resident Evil Vendetta. I think that was also canon to the Resident Evil plotline, and there was this scene where he was just drinking in his sorrows, his guilt, because of all the emotions that were building up to him because of the failures that he's been going through, of not able to save people, not able to save the president, his beloved president, and all that sort of stuff. And because he thought he could make things work, make things in his own terms. And that's what happened in the Infinite Darkness ending, is that he really thought he could work things out, but honestly the turn of events really changed on him. And again, it's very interesting to see our characters now be more alive. I love to see this sort of human drama within Resident Evil, especially, I mean, hey, these are people who are going through constant virus infections, zombie apocalypses, and all that sort of stuff. So it only makes sense for them to go through that. And with the new phase that the writers are going with Resident Evil, is that they're really portraying our current OG heroes that we all know and love as they're putting this not a hero theme to them. They're like villainizing our OG heroes, and honestly, I'm all in for it. Like how they're doing with Chris, portraying Chris as like not a hero, right? Because he's supposed to save everyone, but Chris is not able to save everyone, especially when it comes to his teammates. They're doing the same thing when it comes to Leon, him not saving the president, him not saving people, and not doing enough justice to make things right. And as long as they're doing this correctly and they're not trying to kill them off, I'm totally fine by that, because this is honestly one of the most interesting plot lines that I've been sort of invested on. That's why I also bought RE Village, because I wanted to know what the hell is going on with Chris Redfield and what's happening. But another thing when it comes to Leon is also the turn of events, that how in Village we did see a lot of BSAA soldiers. They were actually dead, and they were being used as tools because they are currently bioweapons that are from that the U.S. is using. And it was previously shown in Infinite Darkness in the last episode in the secret laboratory that the Secretary of Defense is actually creating all these bioweapons, aka the dead soldiers, as tools so they could serve for them and use them as defense. And while Leon, on the other hand, had the opportunity to expose all this sort of stuff and not make this happen, but yet again, stuff just didn't turn out well. I mean, on Chris's end, like Resident Evil 5, Chris fought against this. He wanted to always stop this sort of stuff, and he hated, all these bioterrorism attacks, obviously. And when he first saw the BSA soldier being used as a bioweapon in RE Village in the end of it, obviously it got everyone very confused, along with me, because I'm like, wait, BSAA is literally built upon fighting bioterrorism, but now we have bioweapons on our side? What? And that's why Chris was so frustrated as well, and why they said that's why he said BSAA has gone too far. My only assumption is pretty much because of Leon's actions. I guess he hasn't really found a way to stop them properly, so that's why they secretly continue on the U.S. making bioweapons. So it's going to be very interesting later on in the future titles of where, of how these characters have different ideologies. Well, like with the Redfields, obviously they fight bioterrorism. They hate it. They want to expose whoever who is doing it. I mean, Claire and Chris, they hate that crap. While Leon, on the other hand, although he is against it, he wants to do it in his own terms. He's like holding it off and just defending them in a way in that moment in Infinite Darkness. That Infinite Darkness ending. Again, this whole section when it comes to Resident Evil, it's gonna be very, very interesting, and I'm really looking forward to seeing how they're gonna bring up Leon again. Will they do a whole not a hero theme? This is honestly something we should all look forward to. It's a very exciting times for Resident Evil as of now because of the writing. Resident Evil wasn't really known for its writing, captivating writing or whatever, but now that they're sort of boosting up the writing, making it better in a way, it's honestly makes the games even more interesting, because I'm honestly excited not with just this whole theme with Leon, Chris, and Claire, but also like what's gonna happen, after RE Village, like especially with the whole situation with Rose and such. So there's just so many plots that are building up to the future Resident Evil. Something big may happen in the future when it comes to this, when it comes to all these bioweapons and such. So I'm very excited to see it. And also, again, my perspective on Leon has changed a lot, especially when seeing it. Even my mom was incredibly surprised in the end, where she was like, well, why is he defending them? So Yeah, like with Leon being very very loyal to the government and to the whole branches and such. This shouldn't we should have all saw it coming, because the way he was being portrayed in Resident Evil 2, especially in the remake, they really made it clear of how his character is, that they really made him a loyal goody two shoes type of guy, where he was very loyal to the police department, the sheriff and all that, even though there's corruption within the department and such, or at least when it came to the sheriff, he was very loyal to whoever, and I guess you could say he's very loyal to the being on duty as a law enforcer. I mean, we already saw his intentions, how he was in Resident Evil 2 remake, so I'm very very curious how he will be portrayed as well in Resident Evil 4, the rumored Resident Evil 4 remake. I wonder how that story is gonna be like, and then how he will be portrayed later on in the modern Resident Evil games, because we haven't saw him since 2013 within the mainline plot of mainline plot line, timeline, whatever, in the Resident Evil within this franchise. So it's been a while since we saw actually a lot of the characters. It's been a while since we've seen a lot of the RE characters, because the only OG character we've seen is Chris Redfield. I'm very excited to see how it is, and comment down below how you guys generally feel when it comes to Infinite Darkness, if you did watch it. Also, if you did if you did actually enjoy Infinite Darkness, tell me what were your favorite parts throughout the show. There's definitely a lot of captivating moments, especially when it came to a lot of politics, philosophy, when it came to this whole virus infection and all that. It was very interesting take, and again, my perspective on stuff has changed a lot now when it comes to Resident Evil. So again, very very excited for the future. Again, comment down below what you guys think. Remember to drop a like for more Resident Evil content. There's definitely going to be more Resident Evil content coming very soon within these few days, so I hope you guys stay tuned for that. And also remember to subscribe if you do want more sort of content like this, because there will be a lot of variety of content coming soon to the channel once the grind starts again for me. But anyway, I hope you guys enjoy this little revisit to Resident Evil 4 in 2021, and just thank you for hearing my thoughts on Infinite Darkness, and I'm out. Peace off.